and welcome to the Manifest to Live Life Goldyn podcast and YouTube show. I'm Goldyn Duffy, your host, and I feel like every time I do this show, I'm like, I'm back. I'm back again. Oh boy, life has been so interesting, and I want to share it with you. I feel like this is a good time for me to step out of the, how do I want to say this most positively, out of the interestingness of life, we'll call it. So, as you all know, my husband went for shoulder surgery, and that was actually the last time that we did the show was right before he had surgery. And I listened back to that show the other day, and it was so interesting to listen back because I felt like we were different people when we did that show. The surgery went great. It went fantastic, but it was way more than either of us bargained for. The recovery is crazy. We are now 5 weeks out from the surgery, and last night was the first night that my husband actually slept through the night. Other than that, he went through a few weeks of only getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep. And I have literally been his right hand and helping him with the business, taking him to all the jobs. He really hasn't driven too much. We didn't really want him driving on the Percocet, but also it's really awkward to just have one arm. And then if he moved at all in a weird way, it really bothered him. So we partnered up, we teamed up, and that's what marriage is all about, right? Like taking care of each other when we're down and trying to keep each other up. And it's been a few weeks of that. Compounded by that is our business and finances and all of the things that go along with that, and a lot of anxiety, a lot of challenges. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was about walking through the fire. You know, when you're going through the fire of life, when there's a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of uncertainty and you're feeling fear and you're feeling anxiety. And it was really interesting because this is the first time in quite a few years that we both came to a place where a lot of old fears started coming up and a lot of our traumas of the past. If you haven't listened to my first season, I do share a lot about our financial traumas and the bankruptcies and foreclosures and all the things that we went through. And now, you know, kind of revisiting some of that because we are taking on a huge amount of risk in our business. We just decided to do some really brave things, I'll say, and just facing that and what those old feelings that came up when we, you know, were faced with so much, and having to literally remind myself every single day about my power and having to listen to things that would help me to regain that remembrance. Because when you go into these your small self, right? Your small self is the one that's the fear, it's the anxiety, it's the overthinking, it's the, what I like to call the pile-on, like where you're just, you know, you've got one thing going wrong and then another thing goes wrong. And then you just start thinking about all the things that are going wrong and you forget, you really and truly forget. And there were a few things that I did that really kept me in alignment. Now, I didn't stay in alignment all the time. I will be totally, this podcast has always been about me being really honest with you guys and the challenges that I face and the way that I navigate those challenges so that you can apply these tools to your own challenges and get your own reminders. That's what this show has always been about. It's about reminding you of your power, reminding you that you have a choice in every moment. And when you're in those moments, you know, really up to the fire and you have one thought after another and you literally feel like your thoughts are eating you and you just feel like thoughts are thinking you and you feel like everything that you think about is of this lower frequency, right? I really was pretty astounded that I got to this place, that I got to a place where I felt like, I don't want to say that that I needed to be rescued, but there was like a daily, boots on the ground feeling of, you know, preparing myself in the morning. My husband was he could be very challenging in this time because he was so exhausted and he couldn't think straight. And as a business person, if you own your own business, you know, you have to be on your game. And I was like, how are we going to do this if you're not on your game? You know, we're like at one of the most challenging points of our business right now to scale it to a new level. And the leader of it all is he's not functioning. And so that was a very scary moment for me where I was like, and we had some real strong discussion, and we didn't turn on each other at all, thank goodness. And I would give you advice if you're in a marriage or in a relationship and facing financial stuff or different challenges in life. If you can turn towards each other instead of at each other, right? And you can support each other, and you can yell and you can scream about your fears. And I will say this, like, I've always kind of been one of these, like, for many, many years, I was this law of attraction person who was like, oh, we can't give any energy to the negative, and we can't say negative things. And, when things would go wrong and you say things like, oh, I can't afford it, or I feel so broke, or I feel so lost, or, I'm not good enough, or whatever it is, I always felt like, oh, don't say that. But what I realized in going, being at this place of like being in the fire, was that being able to express this stuff to each other, now you want to do it with somebody that you feel really safe with, and you don't want to keep doing it. You want to do it, you want to get it out, and you want to move forward. And that's exactly what we did. We really got it out. Frustration, anger, sadness, fear, all of it came out. And we both expressed at one or two times we did this together. It was like 2 times in a week. It was one weekend. And afterwards, we both felt just like this huge release. It was like getting it out of our body. So if you have fears and you have anxieties and you're trying to push them down, if you're trying to, you know, self-medicate with alcohol or drugs or whatever, and you're just like over busy, like that's another way that we self-medicate, is by being over busy so that we can't pay attention to what's like really going on inside. But it's always going to show up at like 2:00 in the morning. It was a week straight that I think it's been a few weeks that I haven't like slept right, because I've been had this concern for my husband and concern for the business and all of these things. So it's like and it feels like you're like on this hamster wheel and you can't get off. And for whatever reason, 2-3 o'clock in the morning is when it really seems to hit, and when it really starts to really eat you alive, where you can't sleep and your heart races and you think about all the worst case scenarios. And the reason for that is because in the middle of the night, you have finally created some space for those things that are really going on inside of you to show up. And I think the best way is to express this with someone that you love, that you feel safe with. You can journal it out, but just getting it out of your body, getting it out of your mind. They call it dumping when you like journal all that stuff. You're not necessarily going to attract it if you're doing it from a place of release. And so once we did that, then we were both like, okay, all right, what can we do about it? And then I started to remind us of things that really helped, which was, we are not the same people that we were back then. Like, gosh, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years ago, we were completely different people. We have done really, really hard things. We sold everything we owned and moved across the country, and ran out of money in the middle of doing that. So we've really faced some extremely challenging times, and we saw massive amounts of miracles. And that was one of the reasons that I wrote a book, but also started a podcast, because I wanted to share our faith and our trust in the things that really helped us to get through those things. So if you haven't read, I don't think I have a copy in here, Mindful Manifestation Secrets, that's a great book that describes exactly how to walk through these times of fire. I don't think I put in there about sharing about your fears, because I think that was actually kind of a new realization to me, like in a really big way, about sharing something that is so scary, right? And so vulnerable. Like, we both were incredibly vulnerable, and we have been in the past, but it definitely felt like a new level, because we are leveling up. And that's a really important thing to realize with what you may be facing right now, or what you have faced in the past, or what you're about to face. if you're in a really extreme time right now, a really intense time right now, it's to remember that up levels are uncomfortable, right? I remember feeling like I'm so uncomfortable right now. And that's the leading edge of growth. So if you can remind yourself that when you're in the middle of it, in the midst of it, it's like, oh, this is uncomfortable because I'm growing. This is uncomfortable because I am moving into a new identity, and, it doesn't feel the same. The walls have changed, right? The walls around my safe little world are changing. The room is getting bigger and it feels unsteady. So remembering that, what that does is it helps you to not feel like Chicken Little, right? Like to not feel like the sky is falling, but instead to feel like, okay, what can I do right now that's going to make me feel just a little bit better? And there was one day in particular that I was really, really struggling. In fact, I called a friend, which I think is always really valuable. If you can call a friend that you really trust that will uplift you or make jokes about it or just listen to you and just hear you out. I called a friend and got some, just got some life force back just from talking to this friend, and from this friend reminding me of who I am and all that I've been through and all that I've walked through. Gosh, sometimes we just need these reminders, right? I don't know why we forget. I don't know how it's even possible for me to still forget. So I ended up going for a walk in the canyon, and I have not been doing that. I haven't been exercising. I have not had the energy, forget the time or the energy, but especially the energy, even if I do have the time to go to the gym and to do my normal routine. I've been eating well, really well, but the energy is just wasn't there. So I go for a walk, and I'm walking and I'm really struggling. Like I'm even crying a little, right? As I'm walking, and just noticing the beauty of the canyon as I'm walking, and trying to be as present as I possibly can, kind of bringing myself back, reminding myself, I have like these little mantras and affirmations that I do, and making my demands or commands on the universe for what I want to happen. And as I'm coming out of the canyon, this was like a 30-minute walk, I suddenly get this booming voice. And that's what happens for me. Like when I channel my stuff in the morning, if you look at my Facebook page, this is interesting, every single day for like the past, I don't know, 5 years I've posted. And recently there's been days when I haven't. And that has been weird for me. And it's basically because we hit the ground running and I don't have any time. I need time to just sit and let a message come through. So I get this booming voice and it says, everything's going to be okay. Like everything is always okay for you. You are loved, you are supported. And I just kept getting like this. And it wasn't just the voice. It was this booming feeling. It was this rush of energy, this peace washing over me. And it happened again at church. We're still actually going to church, by the way, to this Catholic church, which we weren't able to go for a couple of weeks because of the surgery. So getting back to church and sitting there and just feeling really overcome emotionally, just feeling that peace of and love of God's love just washing over me. And I really felt it. And it really shifted me. I felt it shift the way I was feeling, and I felt it shift who I was being in that moment. And it was like, oh yeah, that's right. So I come back to the podcast today, not for you, but I'm doing it for me. I realized that, I've got to channel these messages. They're just as much for me as they are for all of you. And I know that the podcast has definitely taken a break, and I really wanted to come back. I made all these promises to everyone that I was going to do this with my husband, and we were going to do the prosperity pie, which we still will. But currently we are getting our legs underneath us with the business again, and have some really big projects we're about to start. And then we are actually going to Arizona for our business training at the end of March, which is a massive undertaking to scale the business to a really really incredible level in the neck in a very short time. So, the growing pains might have been slower if we went slower, but we decided to go really fast, and that's really intense. And so, after that, hopefully he'll come back on with me, because I really felt it was pretty magical to be on here together. But we all have to, I realize we both really need to be in a really solid headspace and really have to be kind of overflowing to give. And once I realized yesterday that I'm not doing the podcast for the world. I'm not trying to save anyone. I'm really just doing it to remind all of us, including myself, about the messages that are full of empowerment, of what we need to do in order to keep ourselves in alignment with the power of who we have to become, the power that we have to create. And it's very, very easy to forget. So if you've been forgetting, it's okay. I'm right there with you. I really feel like forgetting is part of our remembering. So like the longer and stronger you forget, the longer and stronger you're going to remember, like the more it solidifies, because then you start to see evidence. And I know I've shared this before, and I've done whole shows about watching the energy, but man, the little tiny things, the little tiny miracles, just someone saying yes, or, a challenge in a job situation. We redid a woman's kitchen recently, and the dishwasher would not fit under the new countertops, because they didn't place the countertops in the right position. And, I kind of spun out a little bit because I was in that mode of spinning out. And, my husband just comes in very, very calmly and just figures it out. And I'm realizing, like, the calmer we can be, the more we can let go, the easier things are going to be. So, amongst all of this, my daughter, my baby girl, got into a car accident, and thankfully she was totally fine. But she totaled our truck. So we had paid this truck off, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It was funny because we had this little Nissan pickup truck that we bought when we first got to California. And when we first got here, I remember signing the paperwork. So my husband had a van back in Connecticut, and I think that it had died. So he ended up not getting another vehicle because we were going to move. So we were like, okay, it'll be easier to move with just one vehicle. And then when we get to California, we'll figure it out how to get him a truck. So we get to California, our credit scores are not great. So we end up buying this truck in my name, for a crazy amount of interest. I think we paid $28,000 for this little Nissan pickup truck at the end of the day, because our interest rate was so silly, because of our great credit scores. And we paid the truck off, and then my husband drove it for a while, and then he got a new truck, I think 2 years ago, because that one's almost paid off. And my daughter's been driving it, and it's been great because she works for my husband sometimes, so she's able to use the pickup truck. And she crashes it. She was on her phone, which is crazy because she is actually the person who, when she was in high school, she would flip out on me when I was on my phone. So I don't go on my phone when I drive. She kind of like programmed me not to be on the phone. So, yep, she was on her phone, crashed into a lady who was parked at a light. Thank goodness everyone was fine. So you've got to keep those things in perspective, right? And it's one of those things where you just go, okay, here we go. It was just like my husband's shoulder surgery. It was like, okay, let's see what great things are going to manifest from this. It's not a great thing, but something good is going to come from it. We're always very, very positive about that, even though sometimes we can forget it in the midst of it all, right? So they totaled the truck. We had a choice of keeping the truck, or they totaled the truck. And we thought, you know what? We're probably not going to be able to fix it so that it's good enough for her with the amount of money the insurance is going to give us. So let's just total it and let's go and find another vehicle, forgetting that finding a used vehicle of someone you can trust can be very challenging. I'm on Facebook Marketplace. I'm on OfferUp. I'm going crazy. We looked at and lost so many vehicles because she had decided she wanted a Toyota 4Runner, which is a really popular car around here. It's kind of like a surfer car. She wanted something that she could camp in, that she could sleep in, something with a long bed. And so we looked and we lost one. We lost three because people bought them, came and bought them when we thought we were getting them. And it was just like, it's literally been 3 weeks of just this craziness. We actually purchased a vehicle from this kid, and I was very adamant about getting a mechanic to look at it before we bought it. And I trusted this kid so much that I bought it. And then the car needed $4,000 worth of repairs. And this sweet and beautiful kid who restored my entire faith in humanity gave me my money back and took the car back. It was amazing. So we found her a car this weekend, but my point in the story was there was so much like desperation because we were paying for a rental car, didn't want to eat up all of the insurance money on the rental car. So like every day we're trying to find her this car. And there was like 1 or 2 days where we all just let it go, totally let it go, and received a phone call from like a AAA dealership that I looked into online, thought maybe that was the path. So we followed that path. It didn't go anywhere. And then I get a message on Facebook from someone who I had asked 3 weeks ago if they would take 6,000 for a Forerunner they were asking like 9,500 for, and they had lowered the price to 75. So I'm like, well, let me see if they'll take six. So they hit me back up and they said, I'll take 65. I really need to get rid of this. I'm moving. So it went really fast. We met the guy, did the transaction, and she got the car on Saturday, and it was pretty perfect. Like, this is a perfect car for her. This is just exactly what she wanted. It was in great shape. It was really taken care of. But I realized in the midst of all that, the letting go part is so important, because when you are holding on really tight, when you are super desperate, when you are trying so hard to make something happen, you're blocking the energy. There's a timing, there's a universal orchestration that needs to take place. Like, that man had to come to terms with the fact that he wasn't selling his car for that higher price. And he had to get to a point where he actually found another car that he wanted to buy. Come to find out, he had to get to that point. So all these other cars were not the right cars, but they kept clarifying what she wanted. So in that letting go of those couple of days and then just watching the energy for what happens, that's when it manifests. So remember that when you're trying to manifest something, if you're holding on really tight, if you're really having a hard time with it, if you're creating a lot of angst, then you're blocking the flow of energy and you're not in trust. You're not in trust and faith. So much of this life is about living in trust and faith. It's about believing. It's about knowing. It's about living from that higher self, right? So some of the other things that kind of fell away during this whole time was my meditation. And you guys know I've been very committed to meditating for a long time. In fact, we did an abundance challenge in the M21 group. If you're not part of M21 on Facebook, I highly recommend it. We have the entire challenge is posted at the top. So you can just come in and you can do it for free, or you can send us a donation if you really get a great, if you get great benefit from it. But if you just look at the top of all of our posts, it starts on day one. It's called the Abundance Code Activation Challenge. And it goes through 21 days of an activity and a meditation that you can do on your own. We did instruction through it, Jess and I, but I did that through this, and I wasn't really committing to the meditation. I'll be totally honest with you. I did my best. I did my very best. But a lot of times the meditation would happen later in the day, or it would happen at night before I went to sleep. It just wasn't a consistent thing. And I heard something today that really, really struck a nerve with me, and it's from Jim Rohn. If you've never heard of Jim Rohn, look him up on Facebook. YouTube. He is no longer with us, but he was an incredible speaker, and I love, love, love his voice. But he said, wishes without discipline are delusions. And I thought, that is so powerful, because if you're this is where the manifestation world can get a little confusing, because if you're just like commanding or demanding the universe, or just putting, words out, empty words out into the universe, and you're not really feeling them and you're not really believing them, like, yes, there are ways that you're reprogramming your neurological patterns. But if you're not doing anything about it, if you're just sitting around and you're waiting, and I've said this before, waiting weighs the energy down. it's fulfilling manifestations is all about being disciplined, doing the things that are going to get you to that. Like you can sit here and think, oh, I want to be healthy, strong, and fit. But if you don't go to the gym and eat healthy food, how do you really think that's going to happen? It's not just going to magically happen for you. Manifestation is not magic. I think that's something that is really confusing out there, to think like, oh, I just say my affirmations and I pretend like everything's fine and everything's going to be fine. And that's absolutely not true. That's not how it works. We have to do the work. We have to go through these pile-on situations to release the underlying anxieties, the underlying fears, the underlying old stories, in order to get to the new levels of who we want to be, of who we say we want to be, right? So if I'm healthy, strong, and fit, what do? I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I go to the gym. Maybe not right now. I tried today. So funny. I've shared this before. I'm an extremely disciplined person. When I set my mind to something, I set my mind to something. I don't quit on myself. I make promises. I go through. So I said to my husband yesterday, he didn't need me this morning because we're having two of our bathrooms remodeled, and we're getting all new windows in our house. Let's just add, right? Let's just add more fun. So I was meeting with the contractor. Our company is not doing it. So I stayed home and I was like, oh, I could go to the gym before they come. Well, we changed the clocks yesterday, so I don't know what I was thinking. So I woke up and I was like, there is just no way. There's just no way. I'm not even going to kid myself in thinking that that's a good idea. Because when you're going through, when you're going through challenges or you're going through fire, there's times when we have to conserve energy, right? Like if we try to do all the things when our lives are being extremely challenged, we're going to burn out, right? Burning the candle at both ends is not a good idea, right? Eventually the wick is going to end. So I'm all about preserving who I am, preserving my body, preserving my mind, preserving my energy, and making sure that when I'm doing things that it's actually serving me and it's not coming from a place of obligation or addiction. I've been there with exercise. I did HIIT training for 3 years and destroyed my body on a weekly basis. Now I was fit, but I was also constantly throwing my back out because I just wasn't being smart. I was being more obligated and addicted and thinking that was right for my body, when I was really loading my cortisol, and then got to a place where I couldn't even lose any fat because my body was so stressed. So let's not do that to ourselves, especially as, I'm going to be 54 this year, and I'm all about preserving. My husband and I have decided, especially with this shoulder injury of his, which, he's been in construction his whole life, literally out of high school. And so there was he used his body as a tool. He always says, we just decided, like, there's no more lifting heavy. We're not lifting heavy. I will weight lift, but I am not looking to build. I am looking to maintain. I have plenty of muscle. I'm just looking to maintain. So that's a really good message for any of you who are just beating the crap out of your bodies. Like, we really do want to sustain our bodies and not deplete them. And if you're doing things that are depleting them, then there really needs to be a reassessment. And preaching to the choir here, because I have definitely overdone it with exercise, with running. I used to be a huge runner. I would run 50 miles a week, and luckily I never really got injured from that. But my knees don't always love me. So let's just maintain instead of like beating the crap out of ourselves, right? Okay, some of the other things I've been doing is every single morning I will go on YouTube and I will find a video to get me in alignment in the morning. And some of my favorites are Neville Goddard. He is absolutely amazing. I listened to one recently. I sent it, and then I send them. I share them with my family so that my family can actually benefit from that as well. So Neville Goddard is one that I really love. And Florence Scovel Shinn, I found I absolutely love her. She wrote The Game of Life and How to Play It. She's no longer with us, but there was a YouTube channel that I loved, and her voice was like this old English woman. We've recently gotten into Bridgerton, which we have to fast forward a lot because there's a lot of SCX so bad. But the storylines are great and we love the English accents. So I found this one and it was English accents and then they changed her voice and now it's kind of like an AI voice and I really don't like it. But I love Florence Scovel-Shinn's messages. So those are the two that I've really been heavy on. And then Jim Rohn, I hit today, but feeding your mind, being in alignment, setting that alignment up in the morning. And I'm of course back to meditating. I'm really committed to my 15, 20 minutes of just complete silence, going into higher states of consciousness, allowing myself to just drop whatever's here. That is what's going to get you through these really challenging times. And I know there's going to be meditative times when you feel like you can't quiet your mind. Do a dumping exercise first, write it all out, because that's really going to serve you. But as we up level, just remember that anxiety could be excitement, right? It could just be part of shedding that old belief system that, we're not good enough or things are not going to go right for us. Or, I went through a lot of different worst case scenarios and rabbit holes and what ifs. And at the end of the day, none of those things serve us. But what they do is they help us clarify. And that's the best thing we can do is really clarify what we want, really clarify where we're going and make a difference in that way. So I'm going to keep this short today. I just wanted to give you guys an update on what's going on and how to, if you are really challenged right now, because I know as a collective, we kind of go through things together and I can't believe that I would be going through this by myself. So, and if you're not and you're at a really great place in your life, then save this one for some time when you're going to need it because, life is a journey and that's really important to remember. Life is a journey. Sometimes it's going to be really great and sometimes it's going to be really challenging. But as long as you keep going and as long as you remember and as long as you find reasons to be grateful and love the people that you're with and stay in presence, you're always going to win. All right. Love y'all. Peace.